correctional officer killed gay inmate for infecting him with HIV and to cover up secret affair. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It started with a scream. Correctional Officer James Mitchell had worked at Farage State Penitentiary for nearly 11 years. He was known as the quiet type, professional, reliable. He never lost his temper, never raised his voice. But on that Thursday night in March, his voice came over the radio trembling and raw. Code red. Infirmary. Now. By the time backup arrived, it was already too late. The inmate, Terrence Hall, lay motionless on the concrete floor, blood pooling beneath his skull. One eye was swollen shut. His fingernails were broken, jagged with blood. A half-eaten dinner tray was flipped nearby. Mashed potatoes smeared like a crime scene artist had painted chaos across the wall. He had been beaten to death. The cameras, oddly, weren't working. The guards who responded found Mitchell kneeling over Terrence, breathless, blood on his hands. He claimed he had found the inmate like that. But within 24 hours, rumors were already spreading. Terrence Hall was not a nobody. He may have only been serving a 6-year sentence for theft and assault, but everyone in Cell Block D knew that Hall had secrets and he liked to talk. A week before his death, he told his cellmate something shocking, that he had been sleeping with one of the guards, a male guard. He said the guy came to him at night when the other guards were on break, slipped him extra rations, snuck him painkillers, talked to him like they were married. The cellmate told Internal Affairs. First, no one believed him, but then Terrence said something that turned heads. He was HIV positive. And the guard? He didn't know. Detective Alina Torres wasn't new to prison crime. But something about this case was different. Too clean. Too fast. And James Mitchell's record? Impeccable. Not a single write-up. No complaints. No red flags. Perfect file. Too perfect. When she started digging, she found something odd. Mitchell had submitted 22 requests over 2 years to work the infirmary night shift, a position most officers hated because of the risk and boredom. Each request, granted. The shift, always on the nights Terrence Hall reported sick. Coincidence? She didn't think so. It was Terrence Hall's mother who handed over the key piece of evidence. After the funeral, while boxing up his belongings, she found a spiral notebook tucked into a hollowed-out Bible. It wasn't religious verses written in the margins. It was love letters. JM brings me protein bars when I feel weak. He says he loves my voice. I know he can't say it out loud, but I see it in his eyes. The entries were dated, detailed, and unmistakably damning. He said if anyone found out, he'd lose everything. His job, his wife, his kids. I told him our secret was safe, but I'm tired of hiding. I think he knows. I think he knows I might talk. That entry was written 3 days before Terrence was killed. Mitchell agreed to take a polygraph. He passed, except the technician later admitted that the test had been administered by someone from inside the prison's HR department, not law enforcement. And the footage, accidentally deleted. One of the new recruits had recently started wearing a body cam for training purposes. He had been in the infirmary hallway that night but hadn't logged it. Said he was just checking something. When Detective Torres obtained the footage, she played it on loop. At 8:13 p.m., the sound of shuffling. At 8:14, a voice. You said you loved me. Then a pause. Then, James Mitchell. You said you were clean. And then, the unmistakable sound of fists landing. A body hitting the floor, gasping. And then silence. The department tried to bury it. They said Mitchell had a breakdown. They said the inmate had attacked first. They said there was no proof of a relationship. But the letters, the schedule, the body cam, it painted a picture clearer than any confession ever could. James Mitchell wasn't a man who snapped. He was a man who calculated, who seduced, who lied. And when the truth threatened to surface, he silenced it the only way he knew how. With his fists, the warden ordered a lockdown. Every inmate confined. Every guard questioned. Every corridor swept. But the silence that followed Terrence Hall's death wasn't fear. It was strategy. No one was talking, not because they didn't know anything. They knew too much. Detective Torres returned the next morning. This time, she wasn't just looking for evidence. She was looking for a voice, one brave enough to break the wall of silence. She found him in the laundry room. Inmate Carson Bell, serving 12 years for armed robbery, had been transferred to Farage from a different state facility 6 months ago. His name hadn't come up once during her initial interviews. But the moment she said Mitchell's name, Carson's eyes darkened. "I warned Terrence," he whispered. Carson said it had become a pattern. Mitchell's rounds always included Terrence's cell. Always late, always alone. The other inmates noticed, but they knew better than to speak. Mitchell had power. Power that extended beyond the prison gates. He wasn't just covering his tracks. He was rehearsing his defense, Carson said. Carson claimed he once caught a glimpse of Mitchell passing a note through the meal slot in Terrence's door. Days later, Terrence walked with a limp. Whatever he was doing to him, it wasn't love. Torres requested Terrence Hall's prison medical files. They were gone. Transferred during a system update, the prison's IT department explained. But even the backups were missing. The only documentation that remained was a 2-sentence health summary. Subject in good condition. No ongoing treatment. But Terrence had been visiting the infirmary nearly every week for the last 4 months. Someone had scrubbed the record clean. Then came the twist no one expected. A guard named Felix Ortega, who had worked alongside Mitchell, abruptly quit 2 days after the murder. No notice, no forwarding address. But Torres wasn't done. She traced Ortega's last paycheck to a motel 6 hours away. When she knocked on the door, it was Ortega who answered, eyes sunken, hands trembling. "I'm not safe," he said before she even introduced herself. Ortega confirmed the affair. He said he walked in on them once, Mitchell and Hall. Not just talking, not just exchanging contraband, but close, too close. "I told him I wouldn't say anything," Ortega confessed. But after that night, after Terrence told him about the HIV, Mitchell changed. He wasn't afraid of the virus. He was afraid of exposure. Torres offered Ortega protection, but only if he testified. He hesitated. "Do you know what happens to prison guards who snitch?" She nodded, but Ortega agreed. That night, a fire alarm was pulled in the detective's precinct building. While the department was evacuating, someone broke into her office. Only one file was taken, Ortega's witness statement. On her desk, a sticky note in all capital letters. "Your badge won't save you." But it wasn't the handwriting that made her hands shake. It was the signature, Jam. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Detective Alina Torres didn't sleep that night. The note left on her desk echoed louder than the sirens from the fire alarm. "Your badge won't save you." It wasn't just a threat, it was personal. The signature, JM, was a direct message. James Mitchell wasn't hiding anymore. He was daring her to come closer. The department launched an internal investigation. There were no signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. No footage again. The hallway camera outside Torres's office had been under maintenance since the fire alarm. It was the second camera failure connected to Mitchell in less than a week. Coincidence? Not likely. The next morning, Torres drove back to the motel where Felix Ortega had agreed to stay under protective watch. She knocked once, then twice. No answer. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was spotless. Bed made. No luggage. No toothbrush. Nothing in the trash. Only a cigarette, but still warm in the ashtray. On the mirror, written in lipstick, "He doesn't forgive." She knew Mitchell had gotten to him. But how? He was still working. Still walking the corridors of Farage like nothing happened. Still calling Torres ma'am every time she questioned him. She needed something concrete. Something he couldn't bury. It was Terrence's mother again who unknowingly gave her a lead. She called Torres in tears. "They never gave me his belongings. His shoes. His journal. His necklace. They told me it was all contaminated." Contaminated? Torres called the prison evidence locker. The box of inmate personal effects was signed out the night after the murder by James Mitchell. The logbook showed it was never returned. When she confronted the warden, he brushed it off. Probably lost in transfer. That night, Torres got in her car and drove back to the prison. Not as a detective, as a sister of the silence. She'd pulled strings before. This time, she called in a favor from a former FBI contact. Within 48 hours, she was approved to pose as a state corrections audit officer, unannounced, authorized to inspect Farage's security protocols. She walked through the gates wearing a different badge, a new name, and a wire under her shirt. Mitchell didn't recognize her immediately, but she recognized him too well. She watched from a distance as he joked with fellow guards, shook hands with the warden, and gave candy to an inmate with trembling hands. The perfect officer. Too perfect. At 2:47 p.m., she approached him near the East Wing. "Officer Mitchell, I'd like to speak with you privately. Security protocols." He nodded. "Of course. This way." They entered the staff break room. Alone. "Camera working?" she asked, gesturing upward. He smiled. "No cameras in here." Exactly what she wanted. She kept her voice steady. "We've had reports of inappropriate relations between staff and inmates. Does that concern you?" He laughed. "Ma'am, this is prison. You hear a lot of things." Terrence Hall, his expression froze. A beat. Then, "I heard he slipped and hit his head. Tragic accident." "Is that what you're calling it?" she asked. "An accident?" He leaned closer. "You know, I heard someone's been asking a lot of questions. Dangerous ones." His voice dropped an octave. "You should be careful, detective." She didn't flinch, but inside her stomach twisted. He knew. She walked out of that room with a 2-minute recording. Not a confession, but close. Enough to get a warrant. Enough to reopen internal charges. Enough to put Mitchell on suspension. The next day, Mitchell's locker was opened. Inside, wrapped in an old towel, Terrence Hall's missing shoes. Blood-stained, the laces knotted, and beneath them, a photograph. Ripped, folded, nearly destroyed, but unmistakable. Mitchell. Terrence. In the infirmary, Mitchell's arm around him, smiling. When confronted, Mitchell didn't deny the photo. "Yeah, that's me. So what? I cared about him. I tried to help him." "You killed him," Torres snapped. His eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what that boy did to me." "What did he do?" "He ruined me. He said I was safe. He said he was clean." He looked away. "And then he told me he lied. Is that why you killed him?" A pause. Then, for the first time, James Mitchell lost his mask. He looked straight at Torres. "I couldn't let him tell anyone." The moment came quietly. No sirens. No yelling. Just 2 federal agents walking him out of Farage in cuffs. The prison stood still. The inmates watched in silence. Some cheered. Some cried. But Carson Bell, watching from cell 31, simply whispered, "About time." The media erupted. Correctional officer charged with murder, sexual relationship, cover-up, and killing exposed. The DA announced a formal indictment. Evidence was mounting. The body cam audio, the love letters, the falsified shift requests, the medical file erasures, the recovered shoes. All arrows pointed to Mitchell. But there was still one problem. There were no fingerprints on the shoes. No DNA in the photo. And Ortega? Still missing. As Torres prepared for trial, a new piece of mail arrived at her office. No return address. Inside, a single photograph of Mitchell, holding a newborn baby, smiling. Behind him, a wall calendar dated 3 days prior. Mitchell had a visitor recently, someone who still believed him, and someone who just might help him walk free. The courtroom was packed. Journalists elbowed for position. Spectators whispered as James Mitchell was led inside in handcuffs, wearing a navy suit that couldn't hide the exhaustion on his face. His eyes didn't search for family, didn't seek pity. He looked forward at the jury. The prosecution was ready. They had Torres's recordings, the love letters, the falsified shift logs, the recovered shoes. But what they didn't have was a living witness. Ortega was still missing, and that made the case fragile. The defense pounced. "There is no confession," Mitchell's lawyer barked. "No DNA evidence. No surveillance. This is a witch hunt built on speculation and hearsay." But then Torres dropped the bomb. Carson Bell. She convinced the inmate to testify. He stepped into the courtroom in shackles, looking more composed than anyone expected. He told the court everything. "I saw Officer Mitchell pass Terrence love notes. I saw him enter his cell after hours. I heard the arguments. I saw the bruises." The courtroom gasped. The defense grilled Carson. "Aren't you serving 12 years for armed robbery? Can the jury really trust your word?" Carson didn't flinch. "You don't have to trust me. Just read the letters. Just ask why the cameras were down every time they met." When Mitchell took the stand, his demeanor cracked. "I didn't love him," he said. "I pitied him. He manipulated me, lied to me, used me, and then threatened to expose me." His voice rose. "He had HIV. He never told me. I had a family, career. He wanted to ruin me." He paused. "So, yeah, I hit him. But I didn't mean to kill him." Gasps rippled through the room. Partial confession. The jury retired. For 36 hours, the nation waited. And then, while awaiting the verdict, a fire erupted in cell block D. Investigators found evidence of arson. The blaze damaged key storage containing more physical evidence. But it also did something else. It flushed out Ortega. A hospital 2 towns away admitted a man with burns matching Ortega's description. When questioned, he broke down. "Mitchell sent people after me, but I couldn't run forever. I'm ready to testify." Ortega's testimony destroyed Mitchell's case. "I saw them together. I saw the threats, the manipulation." He was in love with that inmate, and when love turned to fear, he turned violent. The jury returned. Guilty. Second-degree murder. Abuse of power. Evidence tampering. Mitchell's face twisted, not in anger, but in relief. His secret was finally out, and he'd no longer have to hide. The courtroom was empty now. The verdict had been read. James Mitchell, guilty. The gavel had struck like a thunderclap, and the air inside had shifted from tense anticipation to stunned silence. But justice wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of what came next. The story spread like wildfire across media networks. Correctional officers' double life ends in murder. Secret prison affair ends in conviction. Headlines screamed betrayal, shame, power, and death. Commentators debated on primetime television. Some called Mitchell a monster hiding behind a badge. Others, disturbingly, called him a victim of emotional manipulation. But the real victims weren't just Terrence Hall or the justice system. It was every inmate who had been silenced, every whistleblower who had been ignored, every abuse that was buried under bureaucratic red tape. Terrence's family speaks out. At a press conference outside the courthouse, Terrence's mother stood at the microphone. She held up her son's spiral notebook, the one he had hidden in a hollowed-out Bible. Her voice cracked as she read his words. "He said he loved me, but only in the dark, only when no one was watching." She looked directly into the cameras. "My son didn't die because he broke a law. He died because someone wanted to hide the truth." The sentencing hearing came weeks later. Mitchell stood in the orange jumpsuit of a prisoner now, not the uniform of an officer. His hands were cuffed, his face gaunt. The judge didn't hold back. "You used your authority not to protect, but to prey. You manipulated, abused, and ultimately took a life to protect your image. You failed not just one man. You failed the uniform you wore. No parole for 20. The courtroom didn't erupt. No one cheered, because there was no victory here. Only a slow, bitter truth unspooling in full view. Mitchell was transferred to a maximum security facility out of state for his own safety. Rumors swirled that inmates at Farage had already placed a bounty on his head. He now lived in segregation, confined to a 6x9 cell 23 hours a day. Ironically, it was exactly the same size as Terrence Hall's. He now lived in the very fear his victim once did. Following the trial, an internal review of Farage State Penitentiary uncovered 17 other complaints of inappropriate behavior by staff toward inmates. Many never investigated. 2 officers resigned. 1 warden was quietly reassigned. The state launched a new oversight task force. But many questioned if anything would really change. Because Farage wasn't the exception. It was the example. After testifying, Ortega was placed in witness protection. He disappeared again. But this time with a new identity, new location, and a chance to start over. But the trauma? It remained. In a letter later given to a journalist, he wrote, "Every night, I see Terrence's face. Every night, I hear him scream. I couldn't save him. But maybe now he can rest." With court approval, Terrence's mother released the full contents of the notebook to the public. Pages filled with heartbreak. Pages filled with fear. But most of all, truth. The notebook was later used by prison reform activists, fueling a movement to implement body cams in all correctional facilities and independent investigations for inmate deaths. His words had power, even in death. In an exclusive jailhouse interview aired months later, Mitchell sat across from a journalist. His face was older now, sunken. The fire was gone. He didn't deny the affair. He didn't deny the rage. "I didn't want to be that person, but I couldn't let it come out. I couldn't lose my family, my career, my life." He paused. "So I took his." It wasn't an apology. It was a confession of a man who had lived in 2 worlds and destroyed both. Farage State Penitentiary would later become a case study in abuse of power. Terrence Hall's death became a symbol, a reminder that behind every statistic is a name, a story, a warning. In a quiet cemetery outside Atlanta, Terrence's mother visits her son's grave once a month. She brings flowers, candle, and sometimes she brings a new letter. She places it by the headstone and whispers, "They know now, baby. They all know now." For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.